I mean, look, I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome being taken from her mother?
What I said is you can pick anything you want up, but the bottom line is very clear.
How dare you?
When you cross the border illegally.
That is just one glaring example of what seems to be a recurring theme. A certain lack of empathy by some Trump supporters for the migrant families being torn apart at the border. Corey Lewandowski, Trump's one-time campaign manager, refused to apologize for his remarks, saying that it had nothing to do with the girl with Down syndrome. Meanwhile, Melania Trump faced a huge backlash for wearing this jacket with the phrase, "I really don't care, do you?" on the back, while heading to visit migrant children on the Texas-Mexico border. Her spokeswoman said there was no hidden message, but her husband quickly contradicted that, tweeting that the message refers to the, quote, fake news media. Then there's this message from Fox News.
These are not, like it or not, these aren't our kids. Show them compassion. But it's not like he's doing this to the people of Idaho or Texas. These are people from another country, and now people are saying that they're more important than people in our country who are paying taxes, who have needs as well.
Wow, joining me now, Sophia Nelson, former GOP counsel on the House Oversight Committee and author of Pluribus One, Rediscovering Our Founders' Vision for a United America. Former State Department Senior Advisor Nayyera and Republican strategist and friend of the show, Katon Dawson. Thank you all for being here. Sophia, welcome to the show, my friend. Let's go to you on this first. I want to play a piece of Donald Trump's supporters at this rally that he held on Wednesday in Minnesota, who were asked about Donald Trump's policy of separating families at the border. Take a listen.
If I tried to take my family into Canada illegally, I'm not going to be allowed to do anything. If I take my family into Mexico illegally, you might not ever see me again. So I think it's a very just policy, even though unfair for the family.
This whole thing of emotions versus logic. Oh, my God, won't someone please care for the children? Well, those children, if I get arrested, my kids aren't going to see me for a while either. Don't bring them to the border. You won't get separated from them.
That kind of callousness makes me cringe, Sophia. But I see it a lot. I see it in my social media feeds. You hear it a lot. It is not like it is uncommon. When you hear that, what is it that you're hearing going on among some of these Trump supporters?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to separate Trump supporters from Republicans, and I think that's something we've been talking about, right? When you see Steve Schmidt, when you see George Will calling for leaving the party or calling for the Democrats to take over, you know that there's an epic crisis for the soul of the Republican Party, but the Trumpification of the Republican Party, Joy, is what you're seeing. This is a group of Americans that are terrified by the demographic shifts in our nation. This is what the underbelly of all this is about. It's a fear of immigrants. It's a fear of people of color. It's a fear of women. It's a fear of what has never been and people that have voices now. And so this callousness and this coldness that you see is also deeply rooted in who we are as a nation, going back to 1619 when we brought slaves here for the first time. In August of 1619, 20 African slaves in chains, and then the process of separating slave women from their children and ripping families apart is really a part of our history, and we have to deal with that to come forward to understand the callousness that we're seeing right now.
But Sophia, is that, I don't know that you can separate the Trump base from the Republican base. I mean, you had Nixon with the silent majority. You've had demonization of people of color, whether it's on the issues of busing, whether it's on issues of, the Reagan era, calling people welfare queens. The Tea Party. Let me play Amy Kramer. Because I recall the Tea Party with, witch doctor mock-ups of President Obama. It's not like Trump came along and suddenly the Republican Party changed. Trump tapped into something that was there, and people like Steve Schmidt and George Will are the outliers, it seems to me. I want to play you Amy Kramer, who came along through the Tea Party, which predates Donald Trump being president. This was heard this morning on CNN talking about the exact same issue.
Every day in America, children are separated from their parents because they commit crimes and the adults are incarcerated. We enforce the law on American citizens. Why is it that we enforce the law upon American citizens, but we should not enforce the laws upon people coming here illegally? Tell me the difference. Do they have more rights than we do?
Sophia, that is not something that Donald Trump produced in the Republican Party. That's in the Republican Party already.
Joy, you and I have been friends for a long time. You know me. I've been a Republican a long time until I stopped being one in 2008 when I voted for Obama for the first time. The issue is this, is that there is a Nixon Southern strategy, as you mentioned. I've been screaming for 25 years, literally, at the wind, apparently, to the Republicans that you're going to have to change the way you talk about people of color, deal with them, deal with people who are different, open up the tent for real, and you have to have policies that back that up and messengers and people who can communicate with others other than somebody who is from the Caucasian, Southern, Midwest base of the party. And so when someone like that says what she says, I don't have any words for that other than sheer ignorance. But I do agree with you that the Republican Party has trended this way, and Donald Trump just came in and blew it up, and it's the Trumpification, as I said, of the GOP.
Let me go to you, Katon, to build on what Sophia was just talking about. The late Charles Krauthammer, and God rest his soul, and condolences to his family. He passed away this week. He had a column that he wrote in August of 2016, and he talked about Donald Trump and the fitness threshold. He wrote, Donald Trump, the man who defied every political rule and prevailed to win his party's nomination, last week took on perhaps the most sacred political rule of all: never attack a Gold Star family. Not just because it alienates a vital constituency, but because it reveals a shocking absence of elementary decency and of natural empathy for the most profound of human sorrows, parental grief. Donald Trump then turned around and won the Republican primaries. I mean, he won them before that. He was already the nominee, but he turned around and he won a huge majority among Republicans. So this sort of callousness, this sort of, well, they're not from Idaho, which says something to me, interestingly enough. You know, they're not from Idaho, so we don't care. That sort of coldness, Donald Trump didn't create it. He found it in the party, right?
Well, he mined it in the party. You know, we had 16 or so candidates. And presidential elections are not won on thousands of pages of white papers that we all get and read policies. They run on big messages. President Obama won on hope and change and universal health care. That's what he won on. Those were big messages. Donald Trump tapped into the big message of illegal immigration that we had seen in 2 prior elections. And he tapped into that vein of saying that our borders are porous. The Republican primary voters listen to it. They're still listening to it. They think the rule of law matters. And this incident now just accentuates how poorly our laws are being upheld. And it really accentuates what Donald Trump said during the election. I mean, I've always told you, Joey, I'm not in love with the Republican Party. I'm in love with America. And I use the Republican Party as a vehicle to try to make it better.
But you know, Katon, you do, Katon, and I have to say, you do, and you've gone through you've done a lot of hard work to try to diversify the Republican Party, Sophia as well. But the reality is, though, Katon, this isn't about the rule of law. You know, this anti-immigrant fervor that we're seeing, not just among the Republican base, but in Europe as well, where there's just this sort of vehemence to it, this sort of callousness to it. This is ethnic. This is about demographic panic. This is not about the rule of law. Donald Trump keeps claiming that either he can't change the law or only he can fix it. It isn't a rule of law question. Isn't this a vein inside of your party that has a tissue rejection against a specific kind of immigrant?
I think it has a rejection to people who are breaking in our country illegally. I do. I see it at the rallies.
Do we see this kind of vehemence against the Irish who've overstayed their visas? We've had, you know, groups come over from Ireland to see about something like 50,000. You don't see it, Katon. I'm sorry, you just don't. You just see this.
I agree. They see the southern border. They see the length of the southern border, which is from Hilton Head, South Carolina, to the middle of Maine. That's how big that border is. And they see people coming over here, breaking in our country. That's what they see. Now, you're right. Do they see the Irish? Do they see the others? Probably not. But they are accentuating seeing this problem from these other countries, the drug cartels, and the news that comes with it.
That is not a real crisis. I mean, Fox News is making it look like it's this, you know, horde of brown people running over and committing crimes. It isn't actually statistically even true. I want to go to Nayyera before we go. Let's quickly play Laura Ingraham. This is Laura Ingraham, who's a longtime talk radio, right-wing talk radio host, who's now Fox News host. This is talking Monday about those migrant children separated from their moms and dads.
Since more illegal immigrants are rushing the border, more kids are being separated from their parents and temporarily housed in what are essentially summer camps.
Okay, these are not summer camps, but Nayyera, you've been on the radio all week on SiriusXM talking about this issue. What are you hearing back? What kind of calls are you taking?
I'm hearing a lot of emotion, and I'm hearing the lack of emotion as well. So I had a caller from Texas who served in Desert Storm, who said his parents, his father served in Germany. He was the one who raised the Nazi references, not myself, and he was horrified. He actually started to hear a grown man cry on the phone because suddenly he doesn't recognize his country is very difficult. What's also difficult is hearing the opposite, the people who say that, who try to dismiss this. It's this prevalence now of, I call ostriches in America. It's a bird that keeps its head in the sand and refuses to acknowledge the reality around them because they would rather believe that their government is doing good and that the person that they voted for has good intentions, rather than recognizing that they have allied themselves with people who are willing to dehumanize and create an us versus them situation. The same people who say us versus them about immigrants and people coming across the border are the same people who do that about American citizens here in the United States.
Yeah, and I want to point out to our viewers, I wish we had more time, that Corey Lewandowski, who said the thing about womp, 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 about the pain of a disabled child being separated from their parents, he's on a plane right now with Donald Trump. Corey Lewandowski headed to Vegas with him. So it's not as if there's anything considered wrong with doing that. There's something going on here. I want to have you guys all back, and we'll talk about this again. Sophia Nelson, Nayyera, Katon Dawson, thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you guys. And coming